The Toronto Blue Jays have interest in Tony Kemp, who has been a solid big leaguer over the course of his career. But how much does he really move the needle for the Toronto Blue Jays? We'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. It's been a pretty uneventful offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays. Let's not kid ourselves here. And it's about to get even more uneventful if these rumors come to fruition. Tony Kemp has been a solid big leaguer over the course of his career. He's been good. He's played multiple positions, very versatile, can run the bases, can hit for a little bit of power, but not really someone that you want in your lineup every day. Not really someone that you want in your lineup ever, the way that he's been playing over the past few years here. Now, Tony Kemp, solid big leaguer, but I don't expect these rumors to really pick up that much steam, Nick. What do you think about it?
It's very, very interesting. It has a lot of Jays fans up in arms. A quick reminder to hit the subscribe button before we get into it. And yeah, let's just get right into it. We've said the Jays need another bat even after the 3 bats they've added. And Peter, I don't know if this is the guy that you and I were necessarily clamoring for here. And this comes from Mark Feinstein, I believe it was one of them. And Robert Murray is who it was. And it says Tony Kemp in his article, free agent second baseman / left fielder Tony Kemp has drawn interest from the Toronto Blue Jays, among others as well, according to sources. And this is recent interest. This dropped yesterday. Now, Peter, I mean, you mentioned it. I don't know if this is just them doing their due diligence, but there is a reason that Robert Murray posted this now. It means that they've had recent contact with Tony Kemp. And when you look at his stats, he can play second base. He's 32 years old. He's coming off back-to-back seasons with a sub 650 OPS before his good season in 2021. He doesn't strike out at all. He's a contact hitter. But in what circumstance would you need a guy like Tony Kemp on our team unless perhaps a bigger trade is coming?
No, you don't need a guy like Tony Kemp, and he's a second baseman. That's his primary position. I could rattle off at least 4 or 5 guys that can play second base on the Toronto Blue Jays currently. So just the fit doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why they would go out and get him unless it's for like a spring training invite or maybe if he wants to play in the minor leagues. I don't know where he's at in his career and if that's something that interests him. If he just wants to keep playing baseball, sure, keep him in AAA. He could come up and you know that he'll do a job for you at the big league level. But apart from that, I can't see him really cracking a big league club. I know he's been on the Oakland A's the past few years, but they're the Oakland A's, and they pretty much give anyone a contract before they move to Las Vegas. So I don't think he's really got a place on the Toronto Blue Jays, let alone any major league club that is serious about winning. So I understand the interest. He's a veteran guy. You might be doing your due diligence, but there are way better options that could fulfill those needs for you and still provide some pretty decent stuff on the baseball field for you. And I just don't think Tony Kemp is that guy. If he wasn't a second baseman, then maybe I'd be more considerate to it, but it just doesn't make sense to me that they're going to go out and acquire a 5th second baseman to create an even bigger logjam in that position.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the stats and the peripherals, I mean, you said it. Isaiah Connor-Falefa, they have him, they have Espinal, they have Biggio, they have Schneider. Is there any of those guys that I mentioned before I give some an interesting little piece of article here? Is there any of those guys you'd rather Tony Kemp play over? Obviously, he's a veteran guy. Does not strike out at all. Like, he has some things. He's an okay defender. But, again, is there any of those guys you'd rather? Maybe Santiago Espinal. You maybe rather Tony Kemp because he doesn't strike out. But even then, that might be a hard sell for a lot of people. Like, is there anyone on the Blue Jays team right now that you would rather take Tony Kemp over? Or, again, it's possible maybe they're shopping Santiago Espinal, and this would be the Espinal replacement. But then Tony Kemp does not play shortstop very much, if at all. So I don't know where exactly that fit. But is there anyone on the team you'd rather have Tony Kemp over, specifically regarding the infielders? And Isaiah Connor-Falefa can't really be the answer because they already signed him to a 2-year deal.
Yeah, well, kind of. He's the backup shortstop as it stands right now, so he's played a lot over there for the Yankees over the past few years, and he's got some experience there, so I wouldn't worry about having a backup shortstop. And Bo Bichette doesn't really miss games anyways, apart from last season where he missed maybe a couple weeks of action. He's been pretty consistent at staying in the lineup, so I wouldn't worry about that aspect of it too much. But if there was one guy I had to choose, it'd probably be Espinal, and just for the simple fact that Tony Kemp hits left-handed. If he hit right-handed, I would say they're both not great. They're both not what the Blue Jays need at this stage. So yeah, he's shown a little bit of pop in previous years, but he only hit 5 home runs last season, barely hit over 200. He's got a sweet swing, I'll give him that, but it doesn't really help you much when you can't put the ball in play and when you can't really get base hits or hit extra base hits. So I'm not crazy about the possibility of Tony Kemp joining the Blue Jays, but like I said earlier in the video, if it's a minor league deal and he wants to play in AAA and be that call up in a pinch, then I'm okay with that because he is a vet and he has been there, done that in the big leagues. So he can come up and contribute for you if you are decimated with injuries. I'm not worried about that, but if he's going to get any regular playing time, I'm not really excited about it.
Yeah, I agree. And a quick thing, in case you're not familiar with Tony Kemp, Thomas here did a good breakdown. Very limited offensive profile, career 94 WRC plus, and the big thing with him is that he doesn't strike out as great decision making regarding swings, but when he hits pitches, they usually don't go very far. So it would be an interesting fit. I don't think it's one that the Jays are. I mean, maybe if they make a trade for Espinal, which maybe for a different type of player, maybe Willie Adames, something we'll discuss in the future. But one thing I do want to cover, Peter, before we wrap up here, and this is from Bob Nightingale's recent thing, and I just kind of want to get your opinion on this. And he basically just put the Blue Jays at power ranking 10, so 2 spots worse than last year. And it basically goes on to say that it's impossible the Jays didn't make the playoffs last season. Best rotation in the majors, even though they did make the playoffs, they made the wild card, so I'm not sure exactly what he's saying there. But the point is, I kind of just want to get your opinion on this. This is what a lot of writers kind of seem to be thinking now, and just kind of the bounce back factor with Bo Bichette, Vladdy, Justin Turner. As the Jays currently stand, and we've discussed it a little bit, do you think bounce backs from specifically Vladimir Guerrero Jr. back to the player he was in a semblance of his 2021 self is enough with the current rotation for this team to be a playoff, a World Series contender like they want and aspire to be, given as well with Justin Turner, who is a very good ad?
If you get 45 home runs and 110 RBIs out of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I think the Jays finish first place in the AL East. That's how impactful he could be. Will he get back to those numbers? That's the big question, and we've been asking ourselves that over the past 2 off seasons. He hasn't been able to replicate that year. Was that an outlier? That's another big question. Was that 2021 season where he tore the cover off the ball from game 1 to 162, was that an outlier in his big league career? Remains to be seen because he's still only 25 years of age. He's still got a lot of baseball left to be played before it's all said and done. So, yeah, if they do get that same 2021 production out of Vladdy, then I do think they're the best team in the AL East just because of that pitching that they can offer. And their bullpen was very consistent last year. It's largely remained the same group that we've seen minus Jordan Hicks, which is a big loss. Let's not kid ourselves, but they are largely the same group. The starting rotation, pretty much the same group as well. And you add in a healthy and firing on all cylinders Alek Manoah to that group, then yeah, I think this Blue Jays team has the makings of a first place team if they can get that production from Vladdy and Manoah and keep that same kind of production from Bo Bichette. George Springer is also a player that's being severely undervalued this offseason because he had a bad year last year. They need him to get back to where he was in his Houston days or early in his Toronto days. When he's healthy and in the lineup, he's been a very valuable contributor for this team, and he just wasn't that last year. He was healthy, but he wasn't the George Springer that we all knew and loved. So they got to get him back, they got to get Vladdy back, and they got to get Manoah back. Then I think you got a first place team. But that's a lot of things that need to line up for this team to reach their full potential. And I don't know if they're going to do that. So that's why the offseason has been disappointing for them.
Yeah, and Ross Atkins is definitely banking on that happening because if not, then who knows where his job will, if his job security will be in jeopardy following another season without a playoff win. But that'll wrap it up. If you want to check out a video from a couple days ago, click on your screen now. Thank you guys for watching and let us know what your thoughts are in Tony Kemp.